Red Bull expects a comeback from Mercedes very soon. It's no more news that Mercedes are struggling really hard this season, suffering porpoising more than any other teams on the grid. However, they played a rather stunning performance in the last Grand Prix in Canada, and this has given a slight hint at a more stunning performance to come. Even Red Bull expects a comeback very soon. Welcome to another exciting episode. Subscribe and ring the notifications bell and stay tuned to the end. Red Bull seemed pretty convinced that Mercedes can quickly recover from its difficult start to the new Formula 1 season and resume being a factor in the championship fight. With Red Bull and Ferrari having been the strongest team so far, Mercedes has found itself slightly adrift as it battles to overcome its porpoising problems. But while some have already started to write off Mercedes' chances in the title battle, Red Bull Motorsport advisor Helmut Marko has no doubts that the German car manufacturer remains a threat. In an interview, Marko denied that the early form pointed to the end of the Mercedes era in F1, like Red Bull itself faced after 2013. He said, "You have to distinguish between the two. The era after 2013 was determined by the new engine regulations, and Mercedes had an incredible dominance in this field. They were up to 2 seconds ahead of everyone, but logically didn't show it. Now, with the change of chassis and engine-wise, the differences are not so big. Mercedes is no longer able to turn a knob and immediately stage a party, but the team is broadly positioned and it is also staffed with really top people in the chassis area." He went ahead to further note his conviction that the Silver Arrows will be back once they manage to fix their bouncing, which we clearly saw in the Canadian GP, where Hamilton secured podium and Russell came in fourth behind him. At the race, they didn't face as much bouncing as they had in previous races. Marko said, "I'm fully convinced they'll be back if they get the bouncing under control, and Lewis Hamilton is 98 points behind Max Verstappen and that gap could quickly close up. I don't think it's the end of an era, but maybe it's a fight on the same level." Added to Mercedes' current struggle to get on top of the porpoising problem, the German car manufacturer's power unit no longer appears to be the class of the field. With Ferrari and Red Bull having made good gains on this front, Marko reckons that the change in order could be the result of the move to more sustainable fuel in 2022. "I don't know exactly why Mercedes has fallen behind. It must surely have something to do with the increase in synthetic fuel, which went from 5 to 10%. Asked whether Mercedes had expressed some confidence about the change of fuel, Marko replied, "Well, it wasn't a cinch for us, and not everything is the same. But of course, we don't have this detailed knowledge of Mercedes. However, logic points to an explanation being connected with the fuel. And of course, when you have such a bloodletting, first of all Andy Cowell departing, and then a good 50 people who are gone, the impact would actually be quite normal." Lewis Hamilton reckoned the bouncing experience at the wheel of his Mercedes W13, aside from his back pain, had led to more headaches as a result of 10G impact. George Russell, meanwhile, revealed that the movements in Baku had left him unable to see his pit board. With the FIA fearing that these effects might still only be the thin end of the wedge, it intervened on safety grounds to hopefully prevent the oscillations triggering a major shunt. On the eve of the Canadian Grand Prix, the governing body announced it would be observing events at Montreal and collecting data ahead of the trip to Silverstone, where it'll take action against cars which exceed permitted levels of vertical acceleration. Those caught fouling by being too aggressive with the setup and pushing it into an area where its car is porpoising could be forced to make changes to dial it out. That meant moving the car out of an ideal setup window and sacrificing lap time to ensure compliance with the rules and guaranteeing that drivers are not suffering the ill effects of porpoising. Now, acting on the grounds of safety, the FIA has circumnavigated the need for consensus and approval from the teams and stepped in. Could this spell a great turn of events for Mercedes? As Red Bull Racing is in top form, where the team has won the last 6 races in a row, Christian Horner knows it won't be easy at Silverstone. The Red Bull team boss says in conversation that the Austrian team will be watching out for Ferrari and Mercedes in the British Grand Prix. Red Bull started the first 3 races with several dropouts, but since the 4th race of 2022, the team has won everything. Despite this, Horner is not sure Red Bull will win again in Britain. Horner revealed, "We've seen Ferrari at tracks like Barcelona be strong. We're hearing of a big upgrade for Mercedes as well." Horner was asked about how Max Verstappen feels as he returns to the place where he flew into the tyre stacks at 51G in 2021, and the Red Bull boss replied, He's arriving back at Silverstone as the reigning world champion. He is leading the Drivers' Championship. However, the 48-year-old Briton noted that this could just turn around, and he refers back to last season's British weekend. He notes, "Our focus is on getting the best out of the weekend, the best out of the car, and seeing how we fare against our opponents." As well as leading the drivers' standings, Red Bull also leads the Constructors' Championship by 76 points over Ferrari. Heading into Silverstone, it's noteworthy that Hamilton's season has been hurt by his own experience. The quotes from Canada offer the best insight yet as to why George Russell had arrived at Mercedes and seemingly had the measure of seven-time champion teammate Lewis Hamilton at every turn. Ill-timed safety cars have played their part in why Russell has ended 7 races on top. But there's another major factor, which remains that as Mercedes have struggled to unlock its W13 creation, it has been the 37-year-old who's been made to deal with experiments, such as pace-sapping setups in a bid to learn what makes the car tick. Hamilton was ecstatic as he bagged a podium in Canada. Compared to his downbeat tones in Spain and Azerbaijan, he was much chattier and more optimistic over team radio in the race. This was not a driver who wanted to retire early after contact with Kevin Magnussen, but one who instead had his sights firmly on a tilt for the fastest lap, while keeping a keen eye on the progress being made by Charles Leclerc. The weekend didn't start off well though, with Hamilton having to abandon the updated floor for FP2 and run an experimental setup he personally labelled a disaster. However, a switch to run in trim more similar to Russell's car, plus more background work at the Mercedes factory and in the simulator, helped turn things around. Regardless of what it is, any Mercedes optimism might need to be checked again. We rightly have been here before with Mercedes. Toto Wolff reckoned that the gap to Ferrari and Red Bull had been halved at Barcelona before the definite backward steps of Monaco and Azerbaijan, which left George Russell and Lewis Hamilton suffering with an unwelcome blend of physical and mental pain. A 3-4 result was a notable step forward in the last race weekend, even if that likely could have become a 5-6 should Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez have factored at the front as normally expected. Furthermore, Hamilton still crossed the line 7 seconds down on race winner Max Verstappen, a gap which was flattered by the late race safety car that bunched up the field. The word is Mercedes has finally solved its porpoising issue, but it is still afflicted by another kind of bouncing as the car runs low and stiff to pound into the asphalt. The onboard footage picks this up clearly as the floor scratches over the tarmac, and lingering on there is fundamentally a lack of performance from the car. Take the race's climax. Hamilton was equipped with hard tyres that were 1 lap younger than those worn by Verstappen for the post-safety car sprint to the flag. And as Verstappen fought off the advances of Carlos Sainz, Hamilton was consistently 7/10 adrift per lap. As per Barcelona, claims that this was a display of pace that on another day would be capable of winning a race appear somewhat wide of the mark. Regardless of what it is, Mercedes could still find their way to the top, battling for the title again, only and only if they solve the numerous difficulties they face. Like and share the video with your friends, and don't forget your subscription keeps you tuned to what we have prepared next for you. Ring the notifications bell right after you subscribe.